This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the New York Mets are 4 wins away from the World Series. How about it, everyone? I'm Ashley Wenskoski. That is our intern, Dan Papillo. We are here with you tonight because the New York Mets are going to the NLCS, and we are fired up. Dan, how are you? I know you are good.
Oh, my goodness. I don't even know how to feel. This is uncharted territory. It feels amazing.
Uncharted waters. The Mets do it in 4 like we predicted. We sat here, Sam and I, on this podcast. I was wavering between 4 and 5. I will admit, Sam was a confident do it in 4. Samantha, still on vacation tonight. She will be back with us in a day or two. Dan, walk me through, just let's get it off the bat right here, the emotions of this game. Where were you watching? How are we feeling before the Lindor home run? Let's get into it.
I was watching in my room with some of my roommates, and I felt pretty dejected. I think a lot of Mets fans can say that. You know, they weren't capitalizing on their opportunities, and then Francisco Lindor came up in the 6th inning, and he blew the roof. I started screaming. I still am recovering from that. That was just an unbelievable moment to share with my friends.
I mean, an unbelievable moment. Maybe the biggest home run in Citi Field history. We can debate it.
Absolutely.
I think you have to say that it is at this point.
Yeah.
Let's start from the top, okay? The Phillies. They go up 1-0 in this game. I don't even care why. I don't even care about that, honestly. But they had a 1-0 lead. And through 5 innings of this game, the Mets, like you said, were not capitalizing on their base runners. I felt good going into today. I felt good going into this game. But the New York Mets, with runners in scoring position off the top of this game, not good.
Yeah, I feel like the 2-strike approach wasn't really there from the Mets today, especially with runners in scoring position. It seemed like, they were laying off Ranger Suarez's curveball majority of the game. And then when the runners were in scoring position and the lights were on, they were swinging at it in the dirt and they just were not coming through. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, you saw some certified bad at-bats from guys like Jose Iglesias, JD Martinez, to name a few, but none of that matters. The Mets had 9 base runners through 5 innings of this game. The Phillies had 1 hit, and yet the Phillies were winning. But that doesn't matter, and no one cares about that now.
That's baseball, Ashley.
Because that's baseball. Francisco Lindor hits just the 2nd grand slam in Mets postseason history. If you were watching on the television and you did not catch the Howie Rose call of it, do yourself a favor. Go back on Twitter, go back wherever and find that, because it is just storybook stuff. He goes, it's gone, it's gone. He may have just outdone himself. It was unbelievable.
What did you think of the call from our guy, Adam Amin? We've talked about him a lot in the past week.
Our boy, our old friend, Adam
pal.
Amin. I thought Adam Amin, and I actually thought the entire broadcast booth, we did not touch on this yesterday, did improve in games 3 and 4 of this series. I think they kind of fed off whatever home crowd they were in front of. So my complaints in game 2 about them, I think, were Citizens Bank Park fueled. I think they did a better job at Citi Field. I thought Amin's call was okay. I mean, he's no Gary Cohen. What am I supposed to say?
Well, yeah, that's comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing it to one of the greatest broadcasters of our generation.
Comparing gold to, I don't know, bronze.
I guess so, but I still think that they had their moments where I was like, what are we talking about?
Sure.
I think it was in the 8th inning, the Mets were up 4-1 over the Phillies, and they start talking about, if the Phillies come back, this is going to be a great comeback. I'm like, what are we talking about?
I know. I don't know if it was Wainwright or Przinsky did say there, they were like, well, like, it isn't over till it's over. And I get that, right? You got Phillies people watching. You're not going to pronounce them dead in front of a national audience, but they were dead.
I mean, we kind of saw that. They weren't really dead.
They were dead. Lindor hits it over the wall. You almost can't believe it, but you can believe it because of how many times this season he has done just that, come through in the big moments. So let's go over what exactly set that up. Going into that inning, the Mets were dying, crying for some offense. They'd left so many runners on base. JD Martinez singles to lead off the inning. He gets to second base on a wild pitch from Hoffman. Marte gets hit by a pitch, and then both Marte and JD advance to second and third on another wild pitch. So at this point, Hoffman's rattled. Tyrone Taylor walks, and the bases are loaded for our king, our Lord and Savior. The broadcast was calling him the captain of the New York Mets. He might as well be at this point. Put the C on his chest. It was a 2-1 count, a 99-mile-an-hour four-seam fastball, and it was right down Broadway.
I mean, 2 things we're missing here a little bit. I mean, I think we missed the Francisco Alvarez came up. He was a little, it was a little big, too big of a moment for him.
Sure.
He struck out. But I don't know about you. I was screaming at my TV to pinch run for JD Martinez in that inning. It did not make any sense to me. Obviously, it didn't matter batter in the end.
I was as well.
But that just made zero sense to me.
Paging Luis Angel Acuna, where are we?
Or Bader.
Or anyone, really. Yes, I was too, but the wild pitches were so wild that it didn't even matter. Luckily. And I mean, it worked out. Lindor coming up to the plate, bases loaded. I had a good feeling to begin with, because how can you not with the season that he's put up? But I mean, when it went over the wall, like you said, you thought it was just a double in the gap for a minute.
Yeah, off the bat, I had no idea. I just saw the ball hit pretty hard going toward the gap, and I stood up. And then the second I saw the ball go over the wall, I blacked out.
I blacked out.
I could not. I don't even know what I said. Me and my roommates were jumping around. They're not even Met fans, and they were so happy for me.
Aw, that's so cute. Citi Field pandemonium. Our guys from the Syracuse Mets, Evan Stockton and Mike Tricarico, were there, and they were tweeting from the Syracuse Mets account. They're like, we're hugging strangers. It was just Citi Field blew up.
Lucky them.
I imagine seeing that on a plane into LaGuardia Airport, just seeing that moment. It must have been really fantastic.
I mean, you probably would have had no idea what was going on, but you would have just been like, that looks fun.
Oh, that looks like a good time. Yeah, Lindor hits that home run. He goes to round first base. You get the camera shot of him. He's not even smiling. I mean, this man is a stone cold killer. He has these moments, doesn't even crack a smile.
I mean, you know what they say. Act like you've been there before. And guess what? He has been there before. This was his second postseason Grand Slam. And I feel like this one was even bigger than the first one. But, he was there in the moment. And I loved that celebration, or non-celebration for that matter. Just the fact that, he knew. He knew, and he was so happy about it, but he held it in because the job was not finished yet.
And I don't know if this is true, because I don't live inside Francisco Lindor's brain, but there's almost a part of me that at this point wonders if he expects him from himself. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but the non-reaction, he's always the guy in this spot, and he always comes through. I mean, at this point, it is unbelievable. You want to say magic, you want to say, I don't know what you want to call it. It's insane. I
mean, I would hope every player that comes up has the hopes that they're going to come through in their opportunities.
But he doesn't even surprise himself. He just expects it from himself. Wasn't even the biggest swing of the season, by the way, because it wasn't an elimination game. That was in Game 161, or it was Pete Alonso in Game 3 against the Brewers, whichever one. You can take your pick there. But I would certainly say it's a close second or third.
This has been the longest 2-week stretch of my life.
Oh my God.
The fact that was only 2 weeks ago feels ridiculous to me.
See, I almost think it's been the quickest. I was looking at the dates of those things that occurred, and I was like, where did the last 2 weeks go? How did we just go from Game 161, 162, okay, the Mets are in the playoffs, to now we're going to the NLCS? What happened?
Maybe I'm just not used to having my October being filled by Mets baseball. True. But just the fact of the matter, the way that this season has gone and the way that these last 2 weeks have gone, it doesn't feel real. I think we're in a dream.
I don't think any of it feels real. I mean, when I'm getting Jeff Passan tweets saying that the New York Mets have the craziest, I forget the word he used, but the ability to bounce back, tweeting that Lindor home run, it's just insane. We're living in a dream, and I don't know what's going on. The Mets are going to their first NLCS in 9 years, since 2015, against the Royals. Kansas City Royals, by the way, are still in this thing. We could get a rematch. We'll see. And we won't get into it right now. The Padres and the Dodgers have just kicked things off over on the West Coast, so we don't know who we're going to play. You can put me on the record once. I've already been on the record before saying that I hope it is the Dodgers. The Padres scare me.
I think, if it's the Padres, we're going to have this whole narrative from baseball about how the wild card teams have an advantage.
Yep.
I don't want to hear all that. But I do think that, at least this season, I think the Mets actually did match up a little better with the Padres than they did with the Dodgers. At least in my opinion. I think they were hitting them a little more. The Dodgers series, although considering it was just before the Grimace stuff, they looked completely lost.
Pre-Grimace. I mean, PG. We should start using pre-Grimace, after Grimace. Anyways, so you'd rather have the Dodgers?
I think I would rather have the Dodgers. They don't have the pitching. I think they remind me a lot of the Phillies right now, where their lineup is pretty top-heavy and their pitching is very bullpen-heavy. I feel like the Padres are the most complete team in this playoff right now, and I don't want to face them.
Yeah, I don't want to face the Padres either. Let's get back to it. So Quintana, we cannot skip over Jose Quintana, because what a night. 5 innings pitched, only 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, 1 run that was not earned, 90 pitches. I mean, Quintana had one job tonight, and he did it. Look, he gave up that 1 run, and for a while we thought that was going to be the only run that mattered, but he gave up 2 hits.
I mean, 24 hours ago, I sat in this chair and I said, which Jose Quintana are we going to get tonight? And we saw the good one. We saw the amazing, he doesn't have that stuff that blows you away, but just enough that it throws off the hitters and it gets outs. And he did all that he could, honestly.
We got Jose WINtana, even though he didn't get
WINtana,
the win.
of course.
Quintana has an 0.57 ERA over his last 8 starts. That's in the playoffs and regular season combined. 5 of those have come against playoff teams, so he has hit just another level these days.
It's what you have the guy for. I mean, these big postseason, the veteran, he's been here before, he knows what to do, and he's performed.
And look, I was certainly an advocate prior to the playoffs of having David Peterson in your playoff rotation. And there were some people that were saying, which I can admit now, that they were right. Quintana has the postseason experience, and David Peterson, as we saw tonight, has been a very valuable weapon out of the bullpen.
He's like one of the only people in this circle of trust that Mendoza has been using right now.
Very small circle of trust.
I mean, I think Reed Garrett, I don't know if you would consider him in the circle of trust.
He's got one leg in, one game out.
Yeah, I don't know. But who might not be in the circle of trust is Edwin Diaz.
Edwin Diaz is not in the circle of trust, in my opinion. Yeah. You can flame me if you want. The 2 leadoff walks in the 9th inning, I will admit it, I was cursing Edwin Diaz up and down. He throws 9 of his 10 first pitches were balls, couldn't find the strike zone. I mean, he was definitely rattled. I think I would say that, without hesitation. But then he came back to get 3 straights out, including, I almost felt like old friend Adam Amin cursed it when Kyle Schwarber was walking up to the plate. He's talking about he's the most prolific home run hitter in postseason history. I was like, Adam, shut your mouth.
They also brought up the stat that I actually used in the Instagram comments, by the way. If you're not following the Instagram, do that at WIMetsPod.
Plug.
But Kyle Schwarber, before today, was 0 for 9 lifetime against Edwin Diaz with 7 strikeouts. And when I saw that stat pop up on the screen, my heart sank. I'm like, he's due. This is the moment. This is Mets and on Mets. This is exactly what's going to happen. But luckily, history repeated itself, and he got that 8th strikeout.
And now he's 0 for 10 with 8 strikeouts. Edwin found his way out of it. Look, we can get into the Edwin Diaz mental evaluation another time. I don't know what it is with him in these big spots, right? Even at home tonight, they did the trumpets. I honestly think it's a little too much for him. I think the whole trumpets thing this year with the up and down season that he's had, right? That was all fine and great when he was Mr. Shutdown 2 years ago. But I think with the year he's had, I think it freaks him out. I'm not going to lie.
Hear me out on this one.
Okay.
I think it's time to move Edwin Diaz from that closer spot. Who should go in? Kodai Senga.
I like that opinion because we will do some NLCS preview things and stuff later down the road. But do I love throwing out a Kodai Senga in a game where you're going to get 2, 3, at absolute most 4 innings from him? No, I don't.
That's why I think it makes perfect sense to move him into the bullpen. And you know what? He's proven that he has that light him up stuff, that he could get those outs in those big moments.
But will they do that? I would almost 100% say no. You can't just take Diaz's job from him when technically he's not doing anything wrong.
When you pay the guy $100 million, it's kind of hard to take him from the job that you promised him.
And look, I mean, he gives us a heart attack, but he got it done tonight, so I can't completely, act like he didn't and act like it was all awful because it wasn't. I will tell you, the end of that game, I was so stressed out. I was coming to get you, but I took a moment and I stood there and I watched on the TV, well documented on this podcast, a girl from the suburbs of Philadelphia who grew up a Mets fan, okay? I had to sit there for a moment and just watch all of the Phillies players, Bryce Harper, Castellanos, all of them. Marsh, just sit there and the broadcast, them watching the Mets celebrate at Citi Field, it healed something deep, deep inside of little Ashley.
I mean, I think that that definitely hits home for you, but I was more focused on how my players were reacting.
That too.
And they were pumped.
I mean, listen, there were numerous, we know my tendency to tear up. There's no crying in baseball, but sometimes there is. And watching Nimmo and Lindor, I mean, they were not even just teared up, they were sobbing crying.
They were absolutely sobbing. It made me want to sob crying because it just shows how much it really means to them. And it means a lot to us, but you don't even really think about how much it means to the players. I mean, this was just a full circle moment for them.
This team, I will not get ahead of myself, but maybe this is the team that finally puts it all together. I don't know, but they certainly have that dangerous atmosphere. They care so much about each other thing going on. I mean, this is a team. We've said it so many times. They had one of the worst records in the National League at the end of May. Here they are. They are going to the NLCS. They've been the best team in baseball since June 1st in the regular season, and now they've continued that run through the postseason. It is truly nothing short of remarkable. I want to point out a quote that Sean Manaea said last night after his big start that even got them into this spot up 2-1 in the series. He said, "At the end of the day, we're all just big kids. When you can have fun and support each other and just be boys, really cool, special things can happen. And I think that's the culmination of what's been happening with this team.
I mean, that is what you want to hear from your players. You want them to go out there and have fun. At the end of the day, this is still baseball. It doesn't matter how big the stage is, and they're absolutely having fun out there, and that is what you look for in a team like this.
They finally clinched in front of a Citi Field crowd, something they have not done since Citi Field opened its doors 16 years ago, so that was great to see as well. And look, again, we talked about it last night, but you just can't overstate it. The energy at Citi Field for games 3 and 4. I said Mets in 4 because I knew the minute that this series was going back to Citi Field, the Mets were going to do it. The energy was insane. It is so crazy to think about for those of you that have been a fan of this team for a long, long time, probably longer than either of us have been alive, I will admit. How far we've come from the WINtana era of things. I mean, Steve Cohen is standing out there taking pictures with fans an hour before the game. Like, this is a dream world we're living in.
I've never seen an environment like this in my 19 years as a Met fan. I mean, there's no reason why that this shouldn't have been happening every playoffs, yet there wasn't. There feels like a different vibe this year. I don't know if it's the Cohens. I don't know if it was the Wilpons. At the end of the day, watching these clips, I said this last night, I will say it again, there was no place I would rather be today than at Citi Field.
No place in the world. Steve Cohen out there. They got the pregame party. They got the postgame block party with the concerts. By the way, didn't see an OMG concert, which we are upset about. Drop it. I guess it's dropping on Friday. I'll survive. That means it'll be here for the NLCS, so I'll build a bridge.
You'll just have that on repeat.
We'll have that on repeat going into Game 1, yes. But just everything. I mean, they have Keith Hernandez throughout the first pitch last night. They have Daniel Murphy throughout the first pitch tonight to Bartolo Colon, of all people. Like, they have the important players back there. Where's David Wright? They have, I mean, all the mascots from all year, right? You got Grimace everywhere. You got OMG everywhere. I even saw Glizzy Iggy was up in the stands last night. The playoff pumpkin, whatever you want to call it, they have every little piece of lore.
I mean, there's just so many gimmicks. It's hard to keep up with.
It is.
But this is why we love the Mets. It's stuff like this that keeps us going every single day.
Tonight, folks, and I have said this before, is why we are Mets fans, the name of this podcast.
Amen to that.
Amen to that. And the last thing I want to say, because it's so funny, somebody tweeted it at Foolish Baseball. They said the Mets are doing a Phillies to the Phillies because the Phillies are doing a Braves, and the Braves already did a Mets. We got our retribution tonight. The New York Mets, who had the third wild card in this whole thing, now come out on top. They beat the Philadelphia Phillies, who won the NL East. We are going to the NLCS. Carlos Mendoza has led this team not quite to the promised land, but we're getting there in just his first season as a big league manager. Dan, final thoughts going into the National League Championship Series.
Mets in 5.
Ooh, Mets in 5. I hope it's not Mets in 5 for some reasons that we will disclose next week. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. And the good news is we have more of these podcasts to come because the season for the New York Mets is not over. We fight on. Thanks so much for joining us. That's our intern, Dan. I'm Ashley Wenskoski. We will see you later on this week.